an incredible thing that's been going on over the last 19 days. A couple of climbers, one of them from Colorado. Kevin Jorgeson and Tommy Caldwell. Caldwell's the one from Colorado. They scaled the granite wall, the face of El Capitan in Yosemite National Park with virtually no equipment. Yeah, they did it with only their hands and their feet
and a rope
and a safety rope and a harness thing. Well, here to talk about it with us is one of your colleagues here at the Denver Post. He's Denver Post staff writer Jason Blevins, who's been covering the story. Hey, Jason, how are you?
That's great
Very
video.
well. How are you?
Hey, thanks for coming in, man.
Hey, Jason.
Woody.
That is great video.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so I got to ask you, the thing that blew me away about this, maybe more than anything, besides just the sheer courageousness.
I thought you were talking about the sheer side
the
of that
sheer
rock.
courage it takes to do something like this and the athletic ability, is that all the skin tore off of their fingers,
exactly.
and they actually had to take some days off from climbing so the skin would heal.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, Tommy said he was setting his alarm to wake up in the middle of the night so he could put lotion and different stuff and little salves and stuff on his fingers to heal the splits and cracks.
Is it cold up there?
It's middle of winter, but that wall is called the Dawn Wall for a reason. It gets the early morning sun and then it stays in the sun for most of the day. And their whole strategy in climbing in winter was that it would be cooler and their hands wouldn't sweat. So they were gonna, they
and they climbed at
purposely
night
scheduled
too, right?
this. Yeah, and then it was even so warm during the day they were climbing at night.
Wow.
Well,
It's nice to climb at night. I've done it before with Helen actually, and your world is only 5 feet diameter.
Yeah.
When you're climbing at night with a headlamp. That's really the only way you would ever get me on that wall.
I heard a punter describe, the Colts punter. He described the other day when they said, you worry about snapping and everything, and I'll get back to where we're talking about. He said, I black out everything except right here. And I think you're absolutely right that not having done it, but you have to concentrate on a 3-foot or 5-foot area right around you.
And that's what these guys did.
Were you communicating with him during the course of the?
No, he dropped his phone. I thought maybe our friendship was ruined or something.
Well, I think
I'd done something wrong.
if something was going to drop, I think the phone is better than him.
Exactly. So,
But
I
they
never
were
got a hold of
communicating
Tommy.
with people, right?
Yeah,
Did they have a computer up there?
Yeah,
Some
they had their
type of
phones.
Device?
Yeah,
Okay.
and all the photographers were coming up and down every day, so that they would bring fresh batteries and stuff and chargers for their phones and charge them while they're climbing.
Yeah.
So they were actually that's what sort of made this whole endeavor really interesting was they were posting on Twitter, posting on Facebook, Instagram. It was really interesting.
Of the stories you've heard from them about what they went through over 19 days, what's the most amazing thing to you?
Kevin's perseverance on that 15th pitch. He spent a week, 7 days, working through, a section from me to Woody, and he just it was really, really, challenging him, this particular sequence, and it took him a week. He shredded his fingers, and they got to this point where, Tommy was going up, and every day, when Kevin was resting his fingers, he was belaying Tommy, and Tommy had made it up to the 19th pitch, top of the 19th pitch, and there's a point where if Kevin didn't knock this off soon, he was going to have to give up and just work with Tommy to get just Tommy to the top.
What do you mean by pitch?
A pitch is a rope length, but it's not necessarily straight up.
Okay.
This wall has been climbed before in 1970 by a guy named Warren Harding, and he just basically hammered, bolt after bolt after bolt and pulled himself up on these bolts. And these guys, they couldn't necessarily follow that route because they needed handholds because they were climbing up with their hands and feet.
And by handholds, just finding space in between the rocks?
Tiny little, and this one that was challenging Tommy was, it's like as wide as a penny, and he had to crimp on that and balance, and it was a really complicated maneuver.
Unbelievable.
Really is.
How far, with the safety harness, how far would they have fallen, or did they fall at any point?
They fell a lot, fell often. But per this free climbing ethic that they brought to this wall, which is really, it's the way they climbed it that is so impressive. When someone fell, they started over again, back at the bottom of that pitch.
Both of them. If one guy fell, they both started?
No, the guy leading, the guy going first. If he fell, he went back to the start and started over.
So I'm assuming that most of the time it's straight up. Yes.
Yeah,
granite wall straight up.
But there's a lot of sideways.
A little bit sideways.
Yeah.
You
Okay,
you can see dips and nicks.
Yeah.
And
So when they would
crannies.
fall, how far would they fall, and the rope would just grab them and hold them in midair?
Yeah, exactly. And they'd swing, you know.
All right, so how far?
Sometimes, 40 feet.
Really?
Yeah. Those ropes are not static, so they stretch, these climbing ropes. So you fall.
And they're bolted into the wall?
Well, they, see, Kevin's got a bunch of stuff right there. He's got on his waist there. He puts little cams and chocks in cracks so that the rope, so
But
he only falls down to that.
What's kind of
that.
interesting about this is like what Paul Newman said, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Rule. There are no rules in a knife fight. How did they decide what the rules were in this climb? Okay, we're not going to put in.
Yeah.
They were.
Well, there's a free climbing ethic.
Okay. All right.
And
Well, that's where I'm
the
going.
free climbing ethic actually emerged from Warren Harding's ascent of this in 1970. Royal Robbins, another Yosemite climber, was sort of distressed that Warren had just basically hammered bolts and built ladders all the way up this wall and said that he climbed it. And Royal Robbins said we should really be focusing more on the athleticism and the ethic and the purity of the form of climbing versus just gear.
This was after he did it, right?
Yeah, after Warren did it, exactly.
And then he became president of the United States, I guess.
I'm glad you made that joke, so I didn't have to.
Yeah, final question about that. Now that they have done this, and I'm sure, do you think they have another goal in mind?
I don't know.
Is this the ultimate, or is there something else?
This is the hardest big wall free climb in the world. That's known. There's spaces in Pakistan and Afghanistan that people haven't been able to get to, but that's and Tommy has climbed out there. But this is widely considered, the most difficult big wall free climb in the world. So now the challenge will be to beat their 19-day mark.
So they're going to go after it again.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they will, but they might in a year or two. But basically, what we've seen in the past when somebody free climbs a route on El Capitan, Lynn Hill out of Boulder did it in 1993 in 24 hours. She came back the next year, did it at 12. Tommy Caldwell came back, several years later and did it in 3. They all come back and they try to do it in the fastest time they can do it.
What's the best climb you ever made?
I think this is I would never climb this stuff, but this was the most entertaining to watch. It was cool to make it a spectator sport. It's something that this sport hasn't really had.
How did they get off the top? Did a helicopter come
No,
pick
you
them up?
walk down the back. They rappelled.
You walked down the back? Yeah. Why didn't they just walk up the back then?
That's
The hell
what
are
I'm
they
saying.
ripping the skin off their fingers? They could have just walked up the back?
It's not
What the hell
about,
are they thinking?
It's not about getting to the top. It's about how they got to the top.
Oh, my gosh.
Hey, Jason, thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Jason
Appreciate it,
Blevins,
guys.
Denver Post staff
That's
writer
a
who
great story.
covered the climb up El Capitan.
I would.